WNST, general managers in the Joe Flacco, Lamar Jackson, Ravens mystery for the week with the Cincinnati Bengals. We've got college basketball in bloom. He is down on the lovely golf course at Compass Point Golf, where he runs tournaments and all sorts of things in the sports bar, amongst other things. But he is our college basketball insider and has spent the last week running around from Catonsville to Annapolis and probably from College Park up to Towson at some point here in the next couple of weeks. Robert Canady, he is Buckets and Birds out on Twitter, and certainly we are into the bucket season here as you're running around and sitting courtside and watching some basketball. I watched a little bit of the Terps and Navy there on Friday night. It feels to me like the Terps are moving a lot of guys in, and they're making this thing interesting. It's so interesting that we're going to be doing an event on the 28th up at Buffalo Wild Wings in Bel Air at the festival as they take on Virginia. And I think they'll be undefeated by the time that happens. Right, Robert?
They should be. Their schedule pretty much sets up that way. As far as the non-conference goes, it's that'll be their first real test of the year. They've played a couple CAA teams before that, Delaware and Hofstra, and a couple locals, like you said, with Navy and the Mount St. Mary's coming up. So yeah, they should definitely roll into that. Undefeated. They've been kind of playing good halves so far. I don't think they put a complete game together from start to finish, and they've had some strong starts, some strong finishes, but definitely the talents there. Saw them against Navy last week, and they once they got rolling there, Navy hung with them for a little while, but they basically put it away in the second half with a couple big spurts, and their young kids look good. I like Aaron Wiggins and Ayala, and Fernando is back, and the new, of course, they call him Sticks, but Jalen Smith, is quite a talent as well, obviously. So. They're going to be fun to watch, and definitely see how they go. No big test in this non-conference season, but that Virginia game will definitely be a good one to watch.
As far as rotation and what this is going to look like, I mean, it's pretty obvious Cowan's going to be handling the ball. I haven't gotten a vibe on that yet, and that was a real problem, like the Suleiman year, where you have all these talented kids, but there's only one basketball, right? And that's everyone's affliction at this point. But all of these guys averaging, double digits now in points in these early games against the Broken Pelvis States and whatnot. But it feels like they're comfortable with this. Now, how that's going to play out once they start seeing the Michigan States and the Purdues, and certainly we'll learn a lot against Virginia as well, although they play sort of a different style of game than they're going to be seeing on the Big Ten as they're slogging it out, flying off to Iowa in February. But it is an interesting mix of players here, and at least watching it in the early going, I'm intrigued. And especially because it feels like Ravens season is going to end, and I'm not interested in hockey right now. I am sort of trying to latch on to, hey, let me watch 20 basketball games here over the next 4 months and at least get into this basketball team this year, because I think they are March worthy, right? Like, they do feel like a team that could be that kind of team this year.
Oh, absolutely. I think they could be. And this early part of the season, I think, is figuring the rotation out. Even Turgeon, after the Navy game, commented he made a switch. He took Morcell out of the starting lineup and he put the freshman Ayala in there, because Morcell hadn't really been showing him what he felt he needed to see. And Morcell responded, with a really strong game there against Navy. And then he was back in the starting lineup earlier this week against North Carolina A&T. So, right now they're probably going about 8 deep. And, that'll probably be their rotation for the most part, unless some of the other, reserves start, showing up, like you said, against some of the Mount St. Mary's and everything. But once they get down to the nitty-gritty, it looks like they'll be very, very strong at about 8 deep. I think will be kind of the rotation. But, the Ayala, one freshman, and Wiggins at the guards, they a lot of times they're going to be playing 3 guards and, then the 2 big guys. And they're going to be a matchup problem for a lot of people. I mean, they're big, they're strong, and they're fast. So it's going to be fun watching those 2 guys.
Terps will be on the 28th taking on Virginia. We're going to be up at Buffalo Wild Wings at the festival in Bel Air, swabbing for the Bone Marrow Registry and for our friends at There Goes My Hero, who are local between now and then. Hofstra, Mount St. Mary's, and Marshall for the Terps. The Navy experience for you the other night, and Maryland and Navy, and I was watching, and there's David Robinson, and a decorated program in its own right because of David Robinson and sort of the house that he had had built down there in Annapolis. That was kind of a nice night. I mean, it was kind of a shame it wasn't more ballyhooed locally, and that maybe college basketball in that way at Navy isn't established like that. Like maybe they've tried to sell the football program more, and they obviously have the whole built-in Army-Navy football game that's part of that. But I thought for a night it was a good look for the Terps to be playing Navy, and I know over the last 50 years or so that hasn't always been the case.
Right, yeah, and it was a sellout. You know, they had a full house, so that was good to see. And I think obviously Maryland being in that had a large part against it. Providence and Wichita State in the first game. Some good national matchups, but I think actually Wichita State had a little bit of a following there. But the big draw was obviously Maryland coming in to play Navy, and they did a lot of neat things, like you said. David Robinson came down and was recognized. During timeouts, they played the fight songs for each of the 4 branches of the Navy, Marines, Army, Air Force. So that was kind of neat. And, full turnout from the midshipmen there in the stands. And, it was a really neat environment. Something, you don't get to experience on a, normal night when you're at the Towsons or the UMBCs or even Xfinity Centers. It was entirely different. And it's kind of neat once a year, and it's, in its 5th year. And all the coaches talked about afterwards, the very first thing they mentioned wasn't so much the results of the game, but just the experience of being there for 2 days and seeing, what the midshipmen go through on a daily basis, that makes and a few of the players commented, that they thought they had it tough, but, they saw that, basketball practice is actually the easiest part of the day for these students.
That's recess.
So, yeah, exactly. So they all came away with a big appreciation, for what's happening there. And, so it's kind of neat to see them experience that and hear them talk about it. So it's a cool thing, and I hope it continues to go strong every year. They always get 2 other good strong teams come in to play in the opener. Then Navy plays in the feature game. So it was a good night.
Robert Canady joining us here from Compass Point Golf, where they're turkey shooting next week. You can learn more at compasspointgolf.com. And, of course, follow Robert Canady, our dear friend, at Buckets and Birds out on Twitter as he goes hardwood to hardwood. I saw you were out at the UMBC Manhattan game the other night, the new gym down in Catonsville as well. A nice big blowout win for UMBC there. And, as much as we talk about Veterans Day and the red, white, and blue and patriotism and Navy and all that, they're going to play Air Force this week as well. And they also have a game against Coppin coming up later on the 3rd of December. You'll hear that here at 8 a.m. 1570 WNST as Coppin is our partner. But UMBC will be part of the story when we're watching Maryland play Virginia on the 28th because of beating Virginia, and they are now a program that even losing the Marquette to kick off the season, you're sort of chasing them around a little bit and saying, they're the most interesting local small program here this year, right?
Yeah, I definitely think so, and nothing I saw Monday night changed my mind. It was my first look at them in person, and and it was actually good to see them. It was their first game against kind of a same level opponent. They obviously played Marquette on the road, a Big East team to open it up, and then they had the small division Shenandoah after that they blew out by 50 points. So, Manhattan's got a good history there in the MAAC, winning a couple championships, and so that was going to be a good opening test for them, and they handled it easily. A really good look from all their new players. The KJ Jackson is the big junior college transfer they got that was one of the national players of the year in junior college, and he came in and had 20 points.
Well, he is their hope to playing another game in March and having another chance to be. Maybe they would be a 15 seed this year if they go through just on name recognition. They wouldn't get a chance to beat a 1 again, but that would be the pathway for them, is saying can they be the best team during the regular season, right? And I don't know the significance of that, but I know having games on your floor matters, right? And all of these Stony Brooks and Hartfords and Maines and Binghamtons that were a test for them last year. You want to see how they're going to do against Penn State and the one chance they're going to have to sort of step it up a little bit. They also play Drexel later on. They have road games in Northern Kentucky as well later on in the month. So they have a couple of sort of weird games in here, and that's where they'll be judged. But I think in their own conference, they'll certainly be a top 4 team in their own conference this year.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they're picked preseason number 3, and I saw a little bit of Vermont. I think they on television tonight. I think played Kansas, and got beat. Just like teams will be beat, like Morgan State got beat by Villanova and the whatnot. So Vermont's still going to be a strong test for them, but their non-conference schedule for UMBC, the names you just read off, outside of Penn State, they're playing some good mid-level, mid-majors, and the type of teams that they're going to have to beat in January in their conference, with the Vermonts and all the others. So I think that they were picked number 3, and there's nothing. Again, I don't see them doing any worse than that. They'll go in as probably a top 4 seed and get a first round bye, home game, I should say, and barring anything really unforeseen happening. And they were playing the other night without a couple of their starters or guys who are going to contribute big. Daniel Aiken is still recovering from an injury, and Noah Garrity, one of their big guys, and the other 2 big guys that did play, Curran and Horvath, performed really, really well. So, I definitely look for them in Vermont to be the top 2 teams, and probably looking way ahead in March, coming down to shoot out for that bid to the tournament again.
Robert Canady is Buckets and Birds. He's down at Compass Point Golf. Talk to me about the turkey shoot next week, because I know it's not every day is a good golf day right now, but any day it's not raining and not too windy, folks are coming down there. You still got 36 holes, I know. And the turkey shoot's like literally one of the big things you do every year, no matter what the weather is, right?
It is, and we have it. You're exactly right. No matter what the weather is, assuming there's not 5 inches of snow on the ground, which at this point doesn't look like it will be. But it's our last big hurrah for the season, and it's held on Black Friday, so a lot of people have off. It's a good chance to get out after spending the day with family and having turkey. Come out, maybe play one last round of golf for the season with your buddy, and we have good food and prizes and beverages as always. And it's We've been fairly lucky with the weather in the last few years. It hasn't been anything horrible. I think one year we actually had kind of a Indian summer type day where it was low to mid 60s, which was really neat. And then we had another year where it was in the upper 50s. So it's not been too bad.
Global warming is helping every turkey football game here in the Northeast, and you barely are going to have leaves to play through, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's never too cold to get out there and hit it around. You can layer up and everything, and have fun maybe for, like I said, one of the last rounds of the year. And it's registrations are rolling in, so it's definitely a fun one to be out there. I'll be out there with it, so it's a good time to play in it.
Buckets and Birds is the way to follow him. By the way, Coppin State plays at Navy this week. They also play at Virginia. Seeing these regional matchups, and I know the Maryland-Virginia thing will be, sort of a one-off thing, but seeing these local schools playing each other, and even in the tournament, the fact that UMBC beat Virginia and they didn't beat UCLA or whatever, that everything about this with transportation and the student-athlete part of all of this does lead to more opportunities for Juan Dixon to go see Virginia this week, right?
Yeah, it does, and that's one thing that's kind of happening at Navy this year. And I don't know if it was by design or if it was just the way the schedule shook out, that they'll be playing the local teams. They played Maryland, as we mentioned the other day. Coppin's going to be there. Morgan's going to be there later this month, early in December. So,
but haven't all of these things in a lot of ways been, coaches worried about other coaches and other recruiting and this? I mean, there's probably a lot of little petty things that go on. Certainly the Maryland Navy thing, nothing was more petty than why they hadn't played football in 40 years. But, old grudges and all of that. But we're now down to sort of basic pragmatism, right? Like how much a money game is worth to Coppin State versus literally getting in the car and going and playing the Virginias or the Penn States or the Temples or the car rides as opposed to plane rides, which probably makes a whole lot more sense for a lot of these programs, right?
It does, and that was one thing, last year with Juan's first year there. They pretty much, racked up the frequent flyer miles as they were playing, way away, not just away games, but way away games against the big money schools and getting those. And, now that he's been there a year and had a lot of that schedule he inherited, so now that he's there and kind of setting his own path.
But by the way, that's how Fang always did it, because he was the only way Fang could get any money, right? Literally, right?
Right. And it's a necessity at that school and schools of that level, but you don't want to kill yourself going into this, conference season 0-13 and beat up and everything. You'd like to come away with at least a few wins and also a better idea of how you're going to stack up against your conference level opponents. So, playing the local teams of the same levels, the Navies, the Towsons, the UMBCs, gives you a chance to measure yourself against those. And obviously it saves on the travel expense, and you get a home and home out of it usually, is the way those work. So, there's always been talk about having the big Baltimore tournament again, and we'll see a little bit of that, in December when with the big doubleheader down at the Baltimore Arena with Morgan and Towson and Maryland and Loyola Chicago, I should say, not the local Loyola.
The other Loyola,
there.
right? Exactly.
Yeah, so that'll be a big one, and with the three of the local teams there playing the same day, so that's the type of thing they've been trying to get organized for a few years and everything. So, anyway, that's kind of the change of pace and everything.
Well, appreciate the insights as always. He is Buckets and Birds. He will be tweeting about all things basketball and hosting the turkey shoot next week as well down at Compass Point Golf. Robert Canady, you can always find him down at Compass Point Golf as well as out online. We'll see you on the hardwood soon, my friend.
Sounds good. We'll talk to you soon.
The BuyAToyota.com Audio Vault is there 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world. My goodness, we've done some chats this week. John Clayton and Jason Lockenfor are in there, and Ross Tucker's in there, and Luke and I are in there talking about Mike Elias and talking about Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson and John Harbaugh and the Bengals this week, and all the Cincinnati guys are there. Ben Reiter will be there with Astro World and talking about Mike Elias. So lots of stuff out in the BuyAToyota.com Audio Vault. That's there 24 hours a day for podcasting or listening to what you want, when you want, where you want. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.